Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.
And to you, as we say, a very good morning to you on this Friday, the 5th day of July. That is Christian Peters, and you were on my mind as we also say a very good morning now to the Dubbo Regional Mayor, Matthew Dickinson, who's pretty chilled this morning because he's in Canberra for the 2024 National General Assembly. I think that's what they call it. Matt, good morning, isn't it?
Good morning, and I'd love to say I'm pretty chilled and laid back, but you are spot on. It's pretty chilled, as in very, very cold.
Well, here's something that's going to make it very hot. Dubbo College is the Ashley Cup champion. How about that?
Fantastic. That's great news, Bret. It's good to see the Ashley Cup still going after, 100 years now? Over 100 years?
101.
There you go, 101 years. So fantastic competition. And I can remember, Bret, way back, and I do mean way back, when I attended South High and Dubbo, the Ashley Cup was a big thing then. And I don't remember us ever winning, but certainly the teachers used to encourage us all to be a part of it because participation was its own reward.
Because that's what it's all about, even though there's a competitive nature to it. It's just fun.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's a good way to get different kids from different schools, Orange, Bathurst, Dubbo, to get together and basically compete, but also meet other people, talk to them about what's happening at that stage of life. Having conversations with other people at their similar stage of life is pretty important.
Absolutely. It's Dubbo's 24th overall Ashley Cup win in, as Matt said, 101 years of competition. It's just the second in the past 14 years, so they should congratulate themselves. That is exciting news. Tell me about this visit to Canberra. What do you do at a National Assembly, Matt?
Well, this is actually combining a couple of different events. The NGA, National General Assembly, has been something that's been going for a long time. And that's basically an invitation to all 537 councils across the entire nation and then come together. And we actually have presentations, like a normal conference. You have presentations by various people. So we might have ministers come along. We might have experts in the field. So, for example, Annabelle Crabb from the ABC gave one presentation. We had Samuel Johnson come along and give a keynote address. We know Samuel Johnson from his time in Dubbo and Love Your Sister, the charity. He was actually, you may remember, hanging up an image, a portrait of him was hanging up in our Western Plains Cultural Centre as part of the Archibald exhibition. So, a great presentation by him. But also, one thing you find at this General Assembly that's different to every other conference I've ever been to, except local government conferences, is we debate motions. So councils can bring motions forward to be debated by the Assembly, and then that forms part of a policy, a framework for the councils of the nation to go to government and say, here's what the Assembly feels, here is a policy direction. So we actually took one forward, Dubbo Regional Council took one forward to be debated at the conference. There wasn't a lot of debate because it was a pretty easy one for people to go, yes, let's do it. So it was unanimous. That went through, and that was in relation to renewable energy framework. One of the frustrations I'm sure you've heard me talk about before, Bret, is the fact that we have to go to each proponent and try and negotiate a VPA, a voluntary planning agreement, with each proponent. Given the fact there's 37 in our area and multiple meetings required, there's probably over 100 meetings required to try and get something out of each one. Some are better than others, and so our motion said there should be a national compulsory process that all proponents across the nation, when they're dealing with their local councils, have got to do. Now, that would come down to planning with each state, but if there was a national framework, it would make a lot more sense. So it was a bit of a no-brainer, that one, I must admit. But still, that's now a policy of the Australian Local Government Association to take forward to the government.
All right, and each of those councils obviously get an opportunity to do that. Is this why it takes all week?
Well, they've extended it. So you've got the 2 days of the National General Assembly. Then they added on a regional forum on day one. So Tuesday became the regional forum. And then today has been added on as an add-on after the National General Assembly for the Australian Council of Local Government. So that's very much focused on the government. So Anthony Albanese was there last night, for example, at a dinner and spoke about the importance of councils. And it's really been driven by Krista McBain, Minister for Local Government, who's a former mayor herself, Mayor of Bega, and she certainly has driven the fact that local government's so important. Why isn't it higher on the agenda for the federal government? So between Catherine King, also Minister for Local Government, and Krista McBain, they've obviously said, let's bring this back. And so today is all about the federal government coming along talking to us as a bunch of local governments. So it's been a 2-day conference many years ago, but it's grown into a 4-day conference.
All right, well, let's turn our attention to some of the local things, and it seems like we're always talking about toilets or amenities blocks, but I guess the problem is that the infrastructure in these is probably getting really old now, and I mean, Victoria Park, relocating the amenities, you're calling on people to, have their say on this.
Yeah, and it's funny you say toilets. One of the conversations I had with Minister Carol Brown last night was about toilets. She actually had heard about our 3D printed toilet, and she says, Matthew, when can I come out and look at this 3D printed toilet? So I end up a conversation with her Chief of Staff and lining up a visit to Dubbo, because she's a Minister for Infrastructure, very important from that perspective. But the toilets in Victoria Park, 1975, they were originally constructed. They're at their end of useful life now. Back in the last government, we got a few dollars from the state government, $403,486 from the last government, and that was basically said, here you go, here's the money. We obviously put a grant application in to go and construct a new toilet block. What we're doing at the moment, Bret, is we're going out with a survey. There's a link on the council Facebook page, on my Facebook page. You can go to Your Say and find that link as well. And that is basically saying, what type of toilet do you want? Do you want to relocate it? We're not saying we'll definitely relocate it. We're just asking the question. We've got 3 spots we've nominated in Victoria Park where it might be logical to have that, the current location where it sits, or maybe over in front of the playground, or maybe in front of the Aquatic Leisure Centre, for example. The different types of construction, what type do you like? The really important thing here, Bret, I suppose, is I've seen a variety of comments on my social media, on the council social media. The bottom line is that if you want to have your voice heard, go to that survey. That's the whole reason we've got the survey there, is so people can give us some feedback, tell us what they think, and that's what will be in the report that goes back to council. It won't be all the social media comments. So if you want to have a bit of a spray or vent at council, sure, go for it. Go for social media. But if you want to actually have an effective voice, then go to the survey and fill in the survey, because that's what the survey is there for.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, that's pretty simple to do then. And we can have our say on that. Matt, you also faced, was it a parliamentary inquiry with some tough questions about the 3D printed block?
Oh, I don't think they were tough questions. I think it was a bit disappointing, actually, Bret, I must admit. This was a state government parliamentary inquiry into the financial sustainability of local government. So pretty important inquiry. And you've got a number of people sitting on that inquiry, including our local MLC, Stephen Lawrence. So you're sitting there, you're trying to give feedback to the state government about the issues that are faced by local government. We're not alone in this, Bret. You've only got to look at how many councils around the state put in an application during the last year, over the last even couple of years, for a special rate variation. Last year, for example, there were 17 councils that applied to IPART for a rate variation above rate pegging. And to give you some examples of how much some of those were, Queanbeyan applied for 64%, Armidale 59%, Lithgow 46%. And then this year, for example, there were another 9 councils that put in an application for a special rate variation, and some of those were quite high. Narrandera 48%, Kempsey 43%, Tamworth 36%. Dubbo has done very well. We haven't had any of those special rate variation applications. We haven't asked for that. We believe we can manage it internally, and we'll keep doing that as long as we can. In fact, the last special rate variation, I've only ever been involved in one in my time on council, Bret, and that was a 2.5% over 2 years for the theatre, to build the theatre back around 2007. So in my involvement in council from 2004, when I was first elected, to today, that's been it. So I think we've done well, and this parliamentary inquiry is really acknowledging the fact that it's very tough with all the cost shifting that's happened from state government, with all the extra expectations the community expects of local government. It's really hard. And so there were some sensible questions. I think Sam Farraway had some pretty sensible questions around how should road funding be dished out? Should it be on individual grant applications, or should we have a consistent process for that? So that was quite sensible. And then it drilled down into the cost of one individual toilet block and whether that toilet block was built appropriately. And I did say at the end of that, it's disappointing that we're looking at the overall finances for the state. We just approved a $180 million budget the night before, and for the focus to be a political posturing on one individual toilet block, I actually said at the end of the inquiry, was disappointing. And I just can't see, Bret, Chris Minns making an announcement. We've solved financial sustainability for councils, 128 councils across the state. The way you solve those problems is to build cheaper toilet blocks. I just don't think that's going to be Chris Minns' announcement at the end of this inquiry. So it was really just a local political posturing over something that's much more important and a much bigger picture than that.
Is it good to be a part of something like that, though, from a local government perspective?
I was invited along as a witness, Bret, and I certainly was more than happy. I said yes straight away to that because in good faith, I went along to say, how can we all work together to solve financial sustainability? The state government realises that councils across the state are struggling. You can only see by those special rate variations, you can see by various approaches, the whole sale yards debate, that was an important debate around financial sustainability. We couldn't keep contributing ratepayers' funds to the sale yards. We had to have a way of making sure it could stand on its own 2 feet and contribute money back. This conference I'm at, the president of the Australian Local Government Association, Linda Scott, stood up at the very first morning. Within the first 2 minutes of her address, she said the number one issue for 537 councils across the nation is financial sustainability. So it's important to be a part of it, but I don't think it was treated seriously from the other side, and that was where I was very disappointed.
All right, Matt, I just realised I'm out of time. I'm sorry. We'll catch up next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Bret.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.